When we experience trauma in life, our brain has a new memory put in there. And that memory is almost like a book or a chapter or a page. And it is full of things that we don't like and we don't want. And it will randomly pop up in our memory when we don't want it to. So we have our brain. This star, we'll say, is a messed up star. It's a traumatic event. And then this line is the new memory that gets put in there, or a new page. Well, every time we see that page, we get triggered, as in there's a marker in the brain that says that the lungs need to start breathing faster and that you need to increase your heart rate and that you need to start playing more memories or start using your imagination to amp up that memory. Because our imagination can take a memory out and then add and detract things to it or make it worse. And when we do that, it creates more processes that are activated, as in our whole body needs more energy to respond as if it has just happened. And that is the subconscious viewing that memory again. And the subconscious doesn't understand time. It doesn't understand that this memory is maybe from 20 years ago. So it's treating it like a very fresh memory. Well, check this out. When you inadvertently pull up that old memory and your imagination changes a little bit, or maybe adds a lot of things to it and it gets even scarier, or let's say it's in a dream. That memory's pulled out and then that dream is built around that memory and makes it 1,000,000 times worse because it's amplified by your fear. Well, either daytime or while you're asleep, but most likely when you're awake when you do this, you're going to remember the way that you altered that memory. Now, like a book on a shelf, let's say that memory gets pulled out, you flip through it, look at it, don't like it, and then you put it back. Well, guess what? What you actually did is you pulled out a copy of that book, of the original one, and you modified it, and then when you stop remembering it, you put it back with the old memory, the original one, and your new modified one. So now you have two memories of that event, and that event is amplified in your brain now. It's easier to access this library because it's getting bigger. The next time you remember it, and sometimes we remember on purpose because we are used to what's comfortable, and sometimes discomfort is what we're comfortable with, and so we live in that, and we will amplify that. So the next time we revisit that, as in, let's say it is somebody that we knew when we were younger and we didn't like what they did, and it was tremendous. It was actually really a bad thing that we remember that was a trauma, and we pull it back out, but we make another copy and we put it back in. So we're adding another layer, and it's easier to access that library. Every time you're pulling it out, you're not just pulling out the original memory, you're making a copy of it, and you're creating a library of that one memory over and over and over. Let me explain it a little again one more time. And this is not to be rude, but this is just a concept that's important to wrap our brains around. That's getting frustrating. So our subconscious views that memory getting pulled out. But that original one is still there. This is being made by energy coming up your spine with your creativity. It's energy that is giving it the ability to see that new or that old memory, but you're creating a new memory of the old memory, and now when you stop thinking about it, the subconscious sees that as a new event, and it files it away. So that's why your library of one event gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And that's why the more you catastrophize, that's not the correct way to say that word, the more you think about those things and the more you replay them, the thicker you make that library of that one event in your mind, because you're creating new memories of the same event over and over and over. You're not just viewing the old one, you're creating new ones. So how do we stop that from being created over and over again? How do we stop from imagining different outcomes or adding to it and viewing it and making another one? Well, that comes from control. This is a big concept. A big concept to explain. Now we have the brain, and we talked about adding to the library of one event where it stacks up with more and more memories. And I'm going to jump to a different area now. So we have our subconscious that is viewing our brain. We have our creativity center, and we have energy coming up that fuels the images that are created in our mind. So we can safely say that when we pull up those old memories of traumas, we are reliving the past and we are suffering our memory. Now, when we start suffering our future imagination, that is when we use our energy and our imagination to think about scenarios that have not even happened yet. Well, our subconscious sees this. Our subconscious does not know if it's the future or the past or right now. So it registers that this is happening. So then this gets filed away as a new memory. Just because it's going on in your imagination does not mean it's not a memory and it's not valid to your subconscious. So when you start bringing up more and more scenarios of what might happen, and then you start changing and tweaking what might happen, you're creating more and more copies of scenarios that can be scary, that trigger these processes that require more energy and that require your body to react in a physical way, as in your heart rate increasing, or your imagination even running more wild, your breathing rate increasing, or you trigger an unhealthy coping mechanism. For instance, let's just say drinking Cokes or eating donuts, because you can get that dopamine hit, you feel better, you get distracted, then your imagination kind of dies down, and you stop making those new future memories that you're adding. Well, guess what? This is a library of memories that are now accessible. So when you start thinking about what might happen again, you have all these ideas that are now memories that you can go through and create more of them. And like I said, when you pull one out, you're not putting that one back in. You're creating a new memory and putting in another one. So let's say you have this library of the future, and then you have this library of the past that is always being added onto. But time is right here in the middle. What is actually happening? What is actually happening? Well, it's not that, and it's not that. So how do we get control of our imagination and the access of our memory and start making the memory of exactly, let's see, this is exactly what's going on out here in the world, and we'll say this page represents all the sights and sounds and feelings and touch all around you right now. So how do you shift from your subconscious and your brain playing, or your subconscious viewing, the past memories or the future memories or creating future memories, and to focus where your imagination is actually creating the present moment in your mind. Now let me get into that just a little bit. When you see things outside in the world, or hear things or smell things, that wall that you look at is not being put in your brain. That wall is registering as energy in your brain. So let's say this line is the wall, this line is what you smell, this line is what you hear. The imagination fills all that in to make a memory. It's using energy, and it's creating a memory of right here and right now. And that is going to make another file, which is the present moment, which is not that scary, which then will get filed away in your memory bank. So how do you get to the point where you're not accessing all your old memories and adding to them? You're not imagining the future that could be just horrible and scary and adding to it, because you can create a scary version, pull that same scary version out, that's not the original, create a copy that's even scarier, so now you're creating a horror library that you have full access to. And every time you're adding to it. When in reality, the healthy thing is to be viewing reality and creating it in your mind exactly as it is around you, and not to be skewing it in essence, or your brain is not living in the moment, as in your subconscious is viewing the past or the future, and you're missing and you're not recording what's going on. You're just like checked out, then you're like, boop, you get popped back in. Well, energy, controlling energy is a huge factor in there. And then organizing your mind. Your energy is coming up, and when we have our subconscious viewing in our brain, a lot of times we think our brain is me, instead of understanding the concept that my consciousness, awareness, spirit, whatever you call it, is who I am. It's not this biomechanical processing machine. Once you create that separation, you start seeing this as a tool that you can use, that you can organize, and start creating sections that you can use and access when you want to. This takes work, but this is our tool that we are given to use. But the issue is we get raised and we aren't taught the separation of the tool and the observer. The observer uses the tool. Energy follows awareness. Let's say you have, and I've used this reference before, or concept, you create a little Lego house in your brain. And then you have a pile of Legos, and you make 4 walls, and you make a little roof and a little door for it. You used your energy to create that image, and then the energy went and hit a signal in your brain that told your arm to move and to move your fingers in a certain manner. That all takes energy to move your arm, to create that, and to move those blocks. Your energy followed your awareness because you were aware of that image. You were aware that you wanted to make it. You were aware that you had the building blocks. And then you were aware that you moved your arm. Your energy followed your awareness. And it's the same way inside your brain. It just takes a hot minute to reset our understanding of the brain. It's not just this ball that has stuff floating around there and comes up randomly. You can actually almost partition your brain to access what you want to access. And in a previous video, I talked about energy. As in, let's say this is a light bulb. You can turn this switch on and off to start memories or processes in your brain directly. And you can choose where the energy goes in your brain and what you're going to access. Where does that start? Well, it starts where the energy comes from, and how do you stop the energy from going where you don't want it to go? How do you divert it from pulling up all those old memories that you don't want to pull up? Well, it takes focus and imagination and awareness. Now, where the energy enters the brain, you can start by just drawing a circle in your imagination and bring your awareness right there. What that is doing, it is diverting the energy from a memory you might not want to access, and then it's creating a circle, and you can color it. So then it takes your imagination, your awareness, and your energy, and you're redirecting it. And you hold that, and you focus, and you maintain that. And then you choose actively what you want to think about. Here is an example of what I like to do. If I am going through a situation currently in life that I know I do not like and I know I will not enjoy, what I do is I already have a plan I have a process or a plan to make sure that I go ahead and file that memory away right where it goes. And what I do is I will draw a little book inside that circle, which is representative of the library in my brain that I can access. And what I will do is, when I send all my energy to that book, I see this big door open and I step into a library that I've built out completely. Then I sit down at my desk, and what I do is, I'm going to erase that right there. I have a little desk built out in here, and I'm sitting there at it, and I pull out a book from my library, and I lay it down on that desk. And then in that book, what I do is I start manually going over everything that happened, and I write it out in a lot of detail. And I'm creating that memory purposefully. I'm not just letting it get created on its own and go anywhere. I'm choosing that what just happened, I'm going to put it in a certain place in my brain where I access it. So what I do is I accurately remember, and this is very soon after an event, I will accurately remember what happened, and then I will write it down. Then I close the book, and I put it back on that library shelf. What I just did is I process that memory through the lens of objectivity, and then I put it directly on a shelf where I know where that memory is. And now it is up to me when I access that memory. So I'm to the point where I don't have random memories popping up anymore. It is my choice of when I access them. Let's say, for instance, sometimes sometimes the brain gets a little wild and I will start thinking about something that I hadn't thought about in a long time and I don't want to. Or it's a painful thing that I'm thinking about. I immediately draw my symbol, go into my library, lay out a book, and I start writing out that story, and then I close the book. Or what I will do is, if I know I've already written that story down, I will go in there, pull the book out, look at it, and then close the book and put it away. So I'm using my imagination to take the memory and just put it away and know that this is a story, this is the past, this is not what's happening right now. So in your imagination, you can organize it the way you want to, but it takes discipline and focus and imagination to redirect your energy in the manner that you want to redirect it. So basically, I have organized a memory system inside my brain through symbology, energy, awareness, and creativity. Well, let's say we have the future stuff going on. Like, well, I'm imagining the future. Let's break that down into a classroom setting. Let's say you all of a sudden imagine in the brain up here that you're in a classroom teaching. You got your awareness going on, you have your energy coming up, and your creativity. And you started to think about all the things that might happen in the future. Organize it. So this classroom can be inside of the library easily. It could just be a whiteboard that's up there behind the desk, and you still have a bookshelf over here with all this stuff. Well, a lot of times in a classroom, it's a great place to figure things out and to plan. Okay, we will use this as a planning session. We will have 3 possible outcomes of this situation that's down the road in real time right here. Because we are in real time going towards a potential obstacle we don't know what it is, we get scared and we can start imagining and potentially adding to that library of the future that's not real at all. So we'll come in here, create a symbol, right out the way, go ahead, create a symbol, draw that book, and then open up the door to the library and go up to your whiteboard. Okay, so check this out. We have diverted your awareness, we have diverted your energy, go into the brain, and we have diverted your awareness. I already said that. So your creativity. Now you have taken control of your energy and creativity, and you're going to use it productively. Instead of thinking of the wild outcomes down the road, you will think of 3 outcomes. 1, 2, 3. 1 will be the worst possible outcome. I want you to imagine just doomsday. Down here, a big nuke goes off. Boom! Everything's destroyed. Okay, that's number 1. 2, you go down there, and everything is just rainbow and sunshine. Just perfect. And then 3, somewhere in the middle where it's just a thumbs up. You know, it's like, that's the worst thumbs up, but a thumbs up, everything's pretty good. You know, it's not doomsday. It's not perfect rainbow and sunshine with treasure at the end of the rainbow, but it has now fallen in the middle with something that is manageable. So you have those on your whiteboard, and that's where it stops. And then what you do is you realize that it is not going to be a nuclear disaster. It is not going to be rainbow and sunshine with a treasure at the end. It will be somewhere in the middle with a logical, reasonable outcome. And that's most likely what it's going to be. So then you have these 3 things that you can easily take those and file away on your own of potentials. But now you know that this one is most likely not going to happen. You know for a fact you're not going to find $1 billion down there, but you know that there's going to be something that's grounded in reality that will be the outcome. Now what you have done, instead of creating new crazy scenarios to store away in your brain to access and freak out about, that trigger those responses as in unhealthy coping mechanisms. Your breathing increases, your heart rate increases, you go into freak out mode. Well, that's energy getting amped way up to use all those processes, and everything goes out of control. And you start imagining even greater crazier scenarios. But you've used this tool to focus your energy onto things that are actually going to be more reasonable and plugged into reality. So now that you have laid those three things out, you've stored them away properly, it's easier to plug into reality because your body is not freaking out from a scenario that is not even going to happen or hasn't happened and probably will not happen. Now your body's calm and reasonable and rational. That is a method that I use to take control of my brain and organize it. It's not that hard. And then when you're finished, you have your stuff organized, and then you plug back into reality. And all this takes just a few moments, but it does take time to organize your brain. And the rabbit trail of symbology is very, very deep, very deep. And being able to access your own memory library gives you a power most people do not have. A lot of times our brain is just this deep labyrinth that's unexplored that we have no idea what it's going to do because it can run crazy. But when we rotate our observation to the outside of the brain from inside of that's who we are, that gives us control of our energy, our imagination, and what's the other one? Energy, imagination, and where our awareness is. I hope some of that made sense. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And these techniques really help a lot to prevent going further into the past and then going further into the future. Because when you pull up, and I'm going to touch on this one more time, when you start pulling up the past and then you go into your library, you divert that energy, and then you start your creativity being controlled in a manner that will record that memory from an objective point of view, as in it's a book and you store it away, and then you're like, oh, cool, I'm grounded right back here in the moment. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, ask me questions. That was a longer video. The end.